Today, this is Becoming More Than My Title, and I'm a special guest, Christine Daspro, who's an amazing leadership coach, and she also focuses on imposter syndrome. So I've been researching and studying hybrid professional identity, which is people that are more than their job titles. They have multiple hats that they wear, but they connect those hats and integrate them. And so they feel like they're, an imposter. They don't know how to talk about themselves. They feel like it's fake to say I have multiple areas of expertise. So when I met Christine, I was so excited for her to help me reveal these statements and beliefs that we have inside of ourselves that aren't true. And so we're going to go into unpacking this and giving people tools and resources about how to overcome being an imposter, especially if you're a hybrid. Christine, why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about you and your background? How did you end up in this work leading imposter syndrome?
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here this morning. My background, I spent 30 years on Wall Street. And of course, as most people know, it's a man's world. It still is, I believe. And I moved out here in 2006 to be around family. I had a great niece that was born and just fell in love with her and said, oh, this is the world I want to be part of. But when I decided to make this leap from New York to here, I think about this so often. I had no defined plan. I just wanted out. I wanted off Wall Street. I wanted a new environment. I wanted new people in my life. And I think about that 15 years later, and I shake my head saying I journey. But came out here in 2006, thought I'd stay in the industry because in my mind, that was the only thing that I knew was being in the financial industry. And realized that it was not meant to be. And knowing that I had no network out here other than 5 people. And as I said, my great niece was under the age of 2 and she had a better network than I did. Fine community, honestly. Yeah. And I found this organization called the Women's Vision Foundation, which focused on educating women in leadership. And I just felt like the world was lifted off my shoulders. I found the place that was going to help me broaden my horizons. And I became a member of the organization, and then ultimately, maybe 6 months later, started working with them part-time. And that grew into an amazing career of 10 years. And they closed their doors in 16. And when they closed their doors, that journey of being with this organization, I realized that my purpose and passion was to be able to help individuals find their own purpose and passion and find out who they are as leaders. And that's why I went independent. I said, I took this risk 15 years ago, or at that time, 10 years ago. I think I could do this one. And then I started one company called Curating Connections, which really focuses on external speakers. That these 50 some odd speakers that I work with specialize in leadership in some capacity or the other. They have found their niche in that world. And I work as a liaison with companies to help them find these speakers who all of these professional speakers and authors reside in Colorado, which is wonderful. They're in your backyard. But then in 2019, at the end of 2019, I just decided that I don't want to be behind the scenes anymore. I have so much to offer and so much from my third career right now. Corporate to entrepreneurial. And I started doing work on myself and realized where that thread comes from. And that's how the name came about, Threads of Leadership. I went back in time and thought about my journey and how it was sometimes straight, sometimes the threads were short, sometimes they were long, but they all came together in helping individuals become their authentic self. And that's how Threads of Leadership came about.
Well, that's quite a journey of self-discovery and just noticing signs of what the next turn and step is in your career. But then you focused in on something really specific, which is imposter syndrome, because you have that all over your website. And it seems to be something very dear to you and important. So why do you focus on imposter syndrome? Why does that matter to you?
Because I went through 30 years on Wall Street, not even knowing I lived in that space.
Mm.
The pace was very fast. The competition was fierce. Um, when I finally realized that I was becoming two different people, the person that I was supposed to be
Right.
at work, and then when I walked into my front door, I was somebody else. That, you know, I remember one time I had a colleague, or I had a party at my house, and somebody said to me when they came, and they said, "I never thought your home would be this warm."
Oh,
Well, that was just like somebody smacked me right in my forehead to say, wow, what image or what brand do I have, that these people are thinking that this is, everything about me. So the fact that I spent that time not even realizing I was living in that space, and I was always afraid, because men will take the journey with less experience and be fine with it, where women won't take the journey and feel they have to be perfect or know everything. So it was an exhausting time, but I didn't even realize I was in that space. So when I thought about threads of leadership, I knew that I could totally relate to individuals that were having that chatter in their head, and that they were having that uncertainty. And that's why I believe that I have a lot to offer when it comes to talking about this particular topic.
Yeah, that really helped me see where you were coming from and why this is important to you, because it's noticing the unnoticed. You weren't even aware of
Mhm.
how you were coming across and the stories and the chatter that was in your head. And when you had that breakthrough, oh my gosh, this is what I've been experiencing. I didn't even know how to talk about it. You're like, how do I help other women? Because I'm not the only one. This
Yeah,
is important.
because you're always afraid that, if we're sitting around a table of both men and women, we have a tendency of thinking of what we're going to say constantly, rolling it, thinking about it in our head, thinking about it in our head, and then we miss the opportunity to share our knowledge, to
Yeah.
share our opinion, because we want everything to come out so perfect. Uh, and that's where I think there's a lot of self-doubt. And what I'm going to say, oh, is it going to make sense? I do that sometimes when I'm coaching somebody, and I'll be talking with them, and I can hear myself say, does that make sense?
Right.
And, I have to step back and say, you know, you will pick the pieces of what I'm saying to you that will apply to you.
Sure.
That's when you give yourself permission to open that window, um, to start thinking about, how do I proceed better as a leader? How do I show people, who I am as a leader, as a worker, as a skilled person, um, without being memorized. You have to believe in yourself before somebody's going to believe in you.
Oh,
You
I
know.
love that statement. I think that is so true. If you can't see your own power and worth, you can't expect it to come externally. Yeah. So, Christine, why don't we do a little framing for people? Because I think the word or the term imposter syndrome, I've seen it used a ton on social media and articles, but I think I'm always a little fuzzy on what it really means. I read it, I'm like, imposter, oh, you just feel like a fraud. But I think it's much bigger than just that idea. So, can we take a moment for you to explain a little bit of how do you define imposter syndrome or feeling like an imposter and what some of that looks like? And then in a moment, Christine has this amazing list of at least 16 different traits and statements that you might be saying to yourself and not realize, oh my God, that's an example of imposter syndrome. And we're going to go through about 5 to kind of give people tangible tools to unpack. Like, if you're saying this, maybe you should realize a better way to orient yourself. So, Christine,
Oh,
how do you define imposter syndrome? Give us like your nutshell.
imposter syndrome, and it has such a negative. When you say it out loud, it sounds negative, and it can be. it can be if you're living in this world of fakeness, fake it till you make it. I hate the statement, but
Yeah.
For the longest time, we've heard that in our career, fake it till you make it type of thing. And that's where I see imposter syndrome really coming to the surface. We raise our hand when we've tapped on the shoulder to do a project, a job, a promotion, and we say yes. So we become very reactive and say, yes, I'm right here for you. Count me in. And then we stop. And that's where the negative chatter starts.
Mm.
Oh my God, I'm not an analytical person. Oh my God, I don't like spreadsheets. It's not my forte or my skill set.
Yeah.
But I find with imposter syndrome, we tend to focus on the things we don't do well than the things that we do well. I'm not saying that you push aside the important parts of your job, and sometimes those are the pieces that you don't like to do. I'm not saying that you don't get better at it, but the confidence is built by the things that you do well, and the skills and the talent. Talent is different than skills.
Yeah.
You can learn skills. Talent is something I want to say, just like an athlete, you wouldn't be a phenomenal football player if you didn't have the coordination or the focus or the strength. That's a talent.
Right.
The skill is a whole other part of it. So I look at imposter syndrome as this negative chatter that we have with ourselves because we're entering the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And if are people going to figure us out?
Mm. I'm hearing a lot embedded in this about our own self-belief and self-worth. And you mentioned confidence. And even earlier, you stated we feel like we have to do it perfectly. I've seen a lot of research where it associates people that are more perfectionistic or high achievers have a tendency to fall more into the bucket of having imposter syndrome because they're always driven of like, am I doing this good enough? Is this like, the standard? Am I meeting the expectations or exceeding them? Like always wanting to perform at your highest, and yet always internally being our worst critic of like, I'm not performing and no one's going to want to work with me and I'm not going to get this job. And why would I ever think that person is going to see the quality of what I do? And it's this battle internally of like outward presentation and then internal feelings of worth. So that's why I love this topic so much. So I want to quickly just define for people about hybrid professionals and why I'm talking with you about imposters, because hybrid professionals are people in the workforce that I think in a lot of ways automatically feel like imposters. So a hybrid professional, as I said, is someone who wears a lot of hats, but doesn't just wear those hats one at a time. They're not compartmentalizing like right now I'm the event planner, now I'm doing marketing. Oh, now I'll do a little bit of some spreadsheets. I'm focused on sales. A hybrid is actually the sum of all those parts, able to like interconnect and like bring the spreadsheets into the event planning, into the marketing. Like it just becomes this way that they've unified and married multiple abilities and multiple identities. And so many hybrids don't feel confident in owning their hybridity. They think it's not allowed, where they can actually be multiple areas of expertise and tell that to the world, because the world's like, sorry, you've got to just pick one thing. You've got to have your niche. And so it's this tension for hybrids of like, I am capable of a lot, and yet the world wants me to narrow. And how do I go back and forth? Hence, I don't know who I am. I don't know how to talk about it, share it, and I don't know what value I bring. So it's that feedback loop, which is very much, I think, in line with the imposter syndrome. Can we jump into a few of your amazing statements? And just to remind people, Christine has a great handout on all these top ways that imposter syndrome shows up for you. And you can get that on her website, which is, here we go, Christine, threadsofleadership.com, right?
Wonderful.
Okay. Yep. So we're going to take some excerpts from that and unpack them, because I think these statements are really powerful to read. So here's one of her statements. I find myself seeking permission for things others don't. Tell me about that statement. How does that show up for people?
It's when everything that we do, we talk about, everything is in a question, phrase. I want to say phrase or tone. Everything is we're asking the question all the time.
Ah, yes.
And what I want individuals to understand too is that, as we all know that leadership is a journey. It's not a one and done. But every time we take that new leap, it doesn't matter where we are in our career, we're going to have a little bit of that self-doubt.
Yeah.
The CEOs of companies have that self-doubt. You know what I mean? They were handed. It's probably the wrong terminology to use, but you think about the pandemic, the past year or so, that wasn't on their, job description. That's something like that would pop up. So they were sitting in a world of self-doubt. Can they carry their company and their employees through this difficult time? So they had the same questions that everybody else had about how am I going to weather this? It may be just a bigger part. So I honestly think what happens is that when we don't let our voice be heard is when we live in that uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Not every single thing we say is going to be correct. We don't have all the answers. If we did, most of us wouldn't have a job if we had all the answers. But so it's okay to say, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, can you explain that a little bit more for me so I can get a little bit more clarity? Doesn't mean you're not smart. Doesn't mean you don't know what they're talking about. You just need a little bit more clarity.
Yeah. So just to put a cap on that statement, if you're a hybrid professional and you find yourself asking permission a lot and ending your statements in that uptone, that question mark, that is a sign that you're sounding like an imposter or you're feeling like an imposter. And just pay attention to that. If other people around you and other colleagues are like, yeah, I'm going to go do outreach to that stakeholder, and you're saying, can I do outreach to that stakeholder? And there's sort of that difference. Those are signs of that imposter coming out.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That was a good one. Okay, we'll jump to the next one. It says, I struggle to truly recognize my hard work and achievement, whether public or private. Tell me about this one, Christine.
What happens is when we're not perfect,
Mm-hmm.
when not all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, we tend to withdraw. We tend to, if you're an introvert, you get even quieter. If you're an extrovert, your voice gets louder, and not necessarily people are listening to you because now your voice has gotten louder. that type of thing. It's a belief mechanism, Sarah Beth. If we're not believing it, we're not projecting it. Part of the hard work and the achievement, and you keep it quiet. Sometimes when you're not prepared, preparation is really big to overcome imposter syndrome.
Say more on that. Tell me why.
We can't wing it. We can't, if we're asked to do a presentation, we need to put the time, the energy, and the focus into the presentation.
Yeah.
We have to be able to learn when we stop communicating. Communicating is very big when it comes to imposter syndrome. And when you're not comfortable communicating is when you start to withdraw, is when you start to second guess. Because when you communicate it and you say it out loud, you're owning it now.
Mm-hmm.
So people, you're going to be a little bit more accountable.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not going to be perfect. And if we're in that mindset that if we're a student and every single A through college, you graduated with a 4.0, or you went to high school and had A's and honor rolls, you bring that into the workplace. In the workplace, there's no book for it.
Right. No.
It is be in the moment, in the experience. And that's where I think people tend to, I have a sister that always says to me, be in the moment. And sometimes, believe me, I roll my eyes, but it's very true.
Yeah.
To be to understand the surrounding.
Yeah. So just to wrap up this statement about recognizing hard work, I mean, I think you've got to be in the moment, like paying attention to what you're doing. Wow, what did I just accomplish? I ran that meeting. It went really well. That was actually a success. Like, don't take that for granted. And an imposter is just kind of, I don't know if it's glossing over, but just not really recognizing the great things they're doing, like just taking that for granted. Hence, they're perpetuating, I'm not good enough. I need to do more and work harder.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, capturing, being present, and recognizing the great things you're doing. We've got just a couple more. So the next one is, I am nothing special. Why would anyone hire me or buy from me? How do you handle that one, Christine?
I don't think there's not one of us that haven't felt that way at one time or the other.
Mhm.
It's a belief, as you said earlier, Sarah Beth. It's the belief mechanism. You have to believe it in order to project it. And so, why would someone, as you say, buy from you if you don't even trust yourself that you're capable of delivering it?
Yeah.
So the first piece of it is trusting yourself, and then you have to bring that trust to the forefront. And it's honesty. It is absolutely honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Have to be You have to be able to say to somebody, this is new for me. This is new territory. I'm excited to be part of it. Sales is, you're selling yourself internally and externally. And sometimes the conversation and the chatter you're having with yourself, you're selling the whole concept to yourself.
Yes.
You're selling. So it's really, it's more in my mind that you have to have this positive outlook, and that you're capable of it. And again, that goes back to preparation.
Yeah.
Know your audience, know your product, know what you're capable of.
I feel like this is a touch of therapy for me right now, to be honest, because when I first started researching and writing about professional identity and learned about this concept of hybridity and was sort of naming that and bringing it into the world, I had a ton of self-doubt. I didn't know if anybody would want to read the book, or now that I have courses and different offerings, if anyone would want to buy and pay to understand how do they find their own hybridity. So all of that was inklings of my own imposter syndrome, doubting my ability, and like believing in that positive outcome of, I know this work matters and it needs to come into the world and people want it. And I had to kind of reinforce that. So I get this one really strongly. What about this one? It says, I am not an expert. Who would want to work with me? I love this one.
You're never going. You won't be an expert if you're entering a new horizon. Research, as you said, for your book and the work that you do. I am a geek when it comes to reading about leadership. I listen to podcasts all the time. People will work with you when they feel that connection of trust and authenticity.
Yeah.
They want to take the journey with you in what they're asking you to do. So I'm a firm believer that when you can feel comfortable enough with the admittance of, this is something new for me. It's a new topic. I'm doing my homework. I'm learning, I'm learning as we go, because, if you're an architect, somebody may tell you to build a house, but once they see the floor plans, their mind is going to change.
Yeah.
So not every single thing is in perfect order. Believe me, I'm not saying that you go into a project and you raise your hand, and you have no clue. I mean, nothing about the content, the subject matter, anything, I think at some point you are a little bit destined to fail.
Yes. Yes.
Because as you say in your part of the being the jack of all trades, as I've read in your book, yes, sometimes is more detrimental in my mind than something positive. Mm-hmm. So when you find something that really resonates with you is when you become that expert.
Yeah, I tell people that are hybrids that have these multiple different identities that you are an expert of your own hybridity. When you're creating that new combination across identities, nobody else does that. Nobody else knows how to. So you've actually created a new type of expertise. But I totally hear what you're saying. This one's tricky because if you don't have any background in a topic and you're outside your comfort zone, I think it is good to be honest and say, listen, I don't know this information, but I'm willing to learn and, take a chance on me because I've demonstrated in other experiences how I take initiative and I'm organized in all of these qualities, which means I could be successful in this thing too if you give me a chance. So it's got to be a little bit of that discussion. But part of this statement is making me wonder, what does it even mean to be an expert? There's so many different levels of expertise. The highly specialized person who, is a surgeon and has gone through an additional 10 years of residency and fellowships and all of this, to the person that, just has done a lot of this and maybe doesn't have formal background in it, but has a different kind of expertise. So expertise and credentials are becoming a strange thing, I think, in the workforce.
Blur sometimes.
They totally blur. And so I think this notion that really gets me is, who would want to work with me? That's the deeper question. Because if you don't want to work with yourself, people say, like, do you want to date yourself? Then other people in a relationship wouldn't want to date you. So do you want to work with yourself? Other people, I think, will want to work with you. And it's that self-belief and confidence. That's what's coming up for me again in this one.
Absolutely. And we always have to remember we're not standing alone.
Yeah.
As they say, there's no I in team.
Yes.
Right? So you will, you want people to know that you can bring in the right players to help. You know what I mean? None of, I remember reading this book one time by Jack Welch, and he'd say, I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I surround myself with the smartest people.
Totally.
So you learn to verbalize that you need the help, and you do the research to find the people that can help. And that's where the expert comes in. As you talk about the surgeon, that surgeon doesn't do that surgery by themselves. There's a team of 10, 20 people that are in that room.
Yeah.
And each one has a specific reason to be there and a specific talent or skill that's going to make that surgery successful. And that's the same way in the business world. Yeah. You have to learn to, and it's not necessarily, and it is a form of networking, but it's also a form of going out and interviewing people for what makes them do what they do and what their passion is.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of self-awareness coming up as we go through these questions of the more you know yourself and you believe in yourself and you recognize your skills and you have that presence and mindfulness of like where you're talented and what you stand for, that kind of helps all these imposter areas fall away because you've done the work to really get to know yourself.
Absolutely.
Christine, this has been an amazing conversation. I know you have so many tricks up your sleeves. Where else can people find you if they want to follow up?
Oh, thank you, Sarah Beth. I'm here to serve. That's what I love to do. And you can go to my website and become part of the mailing list, as was mentioned earlier, to get I call somewhat of an imposter assessment. Take it and then schedule 15 minutes on my calendar. I'm happy if there's something that's really on the forefront of your mind and really feel that you're holding you back. I'm happy to help any way that I can.
That's terrific. You have been a great help for me. And people that are curious about hybrid professionals or think you might be a hybrid or want to understand how do you kind of connect your different identities together to be the sum of your parts in your work, follow me at morethanmytitle.com. Like Christine, I think we both are here to serve and help, and we are passionate about these topics. Christine, any final words to leave people before we go today?
Well, just be kind to yourself. Just celebrate the wins,
Oh,
and
yes.
you can celebrate the failures too, because we learn from that part of something that is not perfect, but you need to celebrate.
Oh, I love that. I am all about trying to celebrate something every day, small and big, because why not? Why wait for like a
Absolutely.
milestone? Christine,
Definitely.
thank you. I have
Oh,
loved hearing your wisdom and your insights and just sort of getting to spend time with you in your area of expertise.
thank you.
Thank you so much for
I
doing
appreciate
this.
it.
Okay, everybody. Bye. Have a great day.